SEW Eurodrive, now empowered.
From Creamer Media in Johannesburg, this is the Real Economy Report. Our top stories this week. South African Airways gives an update on its fleet replacement program. South Africa and Russia want to stimulate bilateral trade and investment. And we discuss carbon capture and storage. National carrier South African Airways is continuing with negotiations for aircraft as part of its fleet replacement program. Chanel Pringle reports.
SAA is comfortable that it will have sufficient equipment available to service the public in the next 2 to 3 years, as it continues with the first phases of its fleet replacement program up to 2020. SAA GM for Mergers and Acquisitions, Jan Blake says.
We have some leases that start to expire during the course of 2010, both on the narrow and the wide bodies. As far as the narrow bodies, we are in the process of renewing leases on the 737-800s that expire from April next year. As far as wide bodies are concerned, some of our older A340 aircraft leases are expiring from November of 2010, and we're in the process of negotiations in replacing them with new wide-body aircraft.
Blake says that the airline still needs to do detailed planning in terms of the replacement of aircraft in the longer term.
The next session of the South African-Russian Intergovernmental Commission for Trade and Economic Cooperation will take place at the end of this month in Pretoria. Keith Campbell reports after the break.
SEW Eurodrive, now empowered.
In the run-up to ITEC, South African Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies has called for business people from both countries to identify important issues South Africa and Russia need to address to stimulate bilateral trade and investment. We asked him how important it was that business give such inputs.
Very important, because it's only through the experience of businesses that have tried to develop trade and investment relations that we know what the issues are. And in the case of Russia, Russia is not a member of the World Trade Organization. The basic framework is that we have accorded them market economy status, and in return for that they've included us in their general system of preferences. But there's a host of issues, sanitary and phytosanitary issues, an agreement on which is being worked on at this moment, and many other trade facilitation issues that may arise and which we need to get the input of business to feed into the next sessions of the International Trade and Economic Cooperation Committee, which is in fact preparing for a possible state visit to Russia next year. Some of the major areas which seem to be moving at this moment in time are in agro-processing, food products, and also I think there is a common problem that both countries have, is that we are major producers of mineral products. We benefited from the commodity super cycle, selling basically unprocessed, unbeneficiated mineral products. And I think we now recognize, and this was part of the discussion this morning, that both of us have got the challenge of adding value, beneficiating those mineral products. And there are some areas where in fact together the two countries command the absolute dominant share of the world market. So I think that the possibilities of investments both ways to add value to various mineral products is quite significant.
Carbon capture and storage is seen as one of the key technologies to reduce future carbon dioxide emissions. Creamer Media TV spoke to Crispin Walker of the Global CCS Institute on the uptake of this technology worldwide.
The world's most experienced carbon capture and storage experts recently gathered in Johannesburg for the South African CCS conference. Delegates agreed that the technology should be advanced simultaneously in both developed and developing nations. Locally, the South African Centre for CCS is compiling a storage atlas, assessing potential sites for geological storage of compressed carbon dioxide. Internationally, the Global CCS Institute was recently established to follow up on the G8 directive to have 20 demonstration CCS plants operational by 2020.
At the moment, the Global Institute's engaging widely with a lot of key countries that are not within the OECD. China and India, South Africa, they're all very important countries in terms of their current and projected emission profile. But we're also quite conscious of the big negotiations that are going to happen at Copenhagen, and really we are taking a wait and see to see what the governments of the world can negotiate in Denmark later this year, with a view that the CCS in the CDM is a key part of that. But it really is up to governments to negotiate and decide with all of the factors on the table. But what we're particularly interested in is engaging early with some of those non-OECD countries to get a better understanding of what their strategic national aims are and what they want to do with CCS, so that we can work collaboratively with them in a positive way that helps that country as well as the aims that we're trying to pursue. Well, in terms of technology, the technology is known, but the challenge really is scaling up the technology and integrating the technology so that you do have a true CCS project where there is a connection between the capture, the transport and the storage. Another key challenge is definitely the public awareness and public support issue. A project will not happen without public support. So it's vital that there is more work done globally but also locally where these projects will happen. For example, we've been doing some work on the status of CCS, and that's been a multidisciplinary approach looking at the status of projects but also the economics and the cost of CCS. Importantly, we've also done some work on the regulatory and legal frameworks that are in place around the world, and we've also looked at our research and development networks. All of that work is really a state of play. We will be updating that work as we move forward over the coming years, but we're really focused on some of the key elements coming out of that. How do we drive the cost of CCS down? How many of the projects are real projects and have been impacted by the global financial crisis? How well is the research and development going? And what sort of regulatory, legal framework issues should be considered by government in setting up a CCS regime in their country?
And now for a sneak preview of this week's Engineering News magazine. In our cover story, read how a South African company is using images and information from space for practical applications and profits. Read how NASA and Goodyear have developed an airless, rubberless tyre to transport large, long-range vehicles across the surface of the Moon. And we report that the big Gauteng freeway overhaul is about 1/3 complete. And in Mining Weekly this week, read our cover story where we report on some conflicting views on how treated mine water should be used. Read how Diamond Council CEO Brian Migogo is urging the diamond industry to reposition itself for the eventual upturn. And we report that diamond miner Petra Diamonds has recovered a 507-carat white diamond at its iconic Cullinan operations in South Africa. That's Creamer Media's Real Economy Report. Join us again next week for more news and insight into South Africa's real economy.
Creamer Media's Engineering News has delivered unmatched insight into the real economy. For breaking news, visit engineeringnews.co.za. The Engineering News, not just for engineers.